Welcome to another episode of our leadership video series, where we interview leaders who are shaping the future of work. Today, we're joined by Christina Nishiyama, Vice President of People and Culture at Professional Contractor Supply. Christina has built organizational architecture that keeps people at the center while driving business strategy, and also teaches HR and leadership at UNLV. In this episode, she shares lessons on building culture from scratch, practicing inclusive leadership, and the skills future leaders will need to thrive. In your career, you've built organizational architecture that ties directly to business strategy. How do you ensure that people remain at the center while still meeting ambitious business goals?
Sometimes that balance is very difficult to find. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to business, people are a central part of that. So no matter what, you have to include people in changes, you have to involve them in changes in many different steps of the process. So I think first and foremost, it's really just all about transparency, letting people know what's changing, why it's changing, and then getting them invested in it somehow. So, one of my favorite things about human resources is that you can truly invest people in change through new positions, through promotions, through upskilling, through training. And these are truly ways to get them invested in the future of the company and the growth of the company. So I think there's always a way to do it, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to communication and involvement of people, not just making decisions in the boardroom and then, pressing play and just moving ahead. Really finding out how you can engage those individuals in the process.
You also teach HR and leadership at UNLV. How has teaching influenced the way you lead in your professional roles, and what do you learn from your students that you carry into your workplace?
I absolutely love teaching. It's something that, even though it keeps me really busy, I love to continue to do on the side for a couple of reasons. I think, first and foremost, when it comes to human resources, it's constantly evolving. And there are lots of laws, lots of regulations that you have to follow. So, no matter what, you have to keep yourself educated to stay ahead of the curve. And I think one really great thing about teaching is it helps me do that. And then, most importantly, it really helps me learn from the students because the students are usually involved in jobs either as an HR person or maybe an aspiring HR person. And they really kind of are the wave of the future and the boots on the ground of what's going on at their organizations. And it really helps me challenge assumptions, I think, in a lot of areas. I might know from my PhD that the right theory is X, and this is the way that you're supposed to do things. But the reality is, when collaborating with students, you can really learn a lot and challenge those assumptions and really determine, hey, maybe the wave of the future is this or it's that. So I think it just really also is a great way to help people grow and support them, which is one of the reasons I got involved in writing HR certification books, is because I love to help new HR people in the field. Sometimes it's a challenging one to get into because of all the kind of prerequisites to be an HR person. And so those certifications can really help you get a leg up on that too.
You've helped design the organizational architecture and foundational values in a fast paced startup environment. Looking back, what's the most important lesson you learned about building culture from scratch?
Yeah. So if anyone has been at a startup, I'm sure you can feel the pain and the pressure. It's a lot of work, it's overwhelming. But I think what I've noticed, and I think I learned this very early in my career when I was in charge of creating programs and processes and policies for organizations, is that culture really starts on the floor. And I think sometimes we try to create these cultures and create these policies and processes from the boardroom, but when in reality they're lives in a completely different place. So I think I've learned tough lessons at times where you can't really over prescribe how a new organization is going to be with respect to its culture or how people are going to act, because you really got to get out there on the floor and see how people are truly living their positions. So I think it's really just a fine balance. And I think I can't emphasize enough as a leader taking some time to just get out on the floor and be with the people, because that's really where we learn so much about our organization, about pain points, about future direction, about things we need to change. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just we can't create culture in a vacuum. it's a very lived experience.
You've emphasized fostering respectful, diverse, and people driven cultures. What does inclusive leadership look like in practice? And what advice would you give to leaders who want to build it authentically?
Yeah, this is it's been a topic of conversation for a long time and it's a tough one. I think what it comes down to is you have to have, leadership engaged at the top, bought into I want this diversity, I want this inclusivity in our organization and here's how we're going to do it. See, that part is critical, but I think the other aspect of it is when you talk about bringing people to the table, you really have to make the table work for everyone. And an example of what I mean by that is you got to consider the way that you do things now, and maybe it doesn't work for everybody now that you have this more diverse and inclusive workplace. So there might, for example, be meetings where the 5 people that were always in those meetings are not afraid to speak up and they're going to say how they feel. But then when that expands to 10 people, you really have to consider, are people afraid to speak? Is there maybe a different format that we need to structure this meeting in to be sure that all these opinions are being included? So I think sometimes there's a lot of work on the back end that can get missed, that it's not just about creating the program and the buy-in, but how you change your existing structure to make it all fit and truly make people feel included in it.
As both a practitioner and an instructor, what do you see as the most important skill for future HR and business leaders to develop if they want to thrive in the next decade?
I mean, I think the world continues to talk about AI. I think I hear that word 25 times a day. I'm sure everyone else does. So I would just broadly say changes in technology. And for me, what's always been my passion and what I focused my PhD on is the interaction between humans and technology, because I think that's something that we're really trying to figure out and navigate. And specifically, I think my kind of biggest area of focus and biggest passion is empathy and technology. So, the reason why we love having people do jobs is there's a certain level of emotional intelligence, of empathy. And then when you add technology to the picture, that kind of goes away. So, how do we find that balance between the people side, the empathy, the perspective taking, the emotional intelligence, and all this new technology that we want to implement? And what's really the right balance? I think is just huge right now.